Good morning. We're continuing what we learned for the last 2 days of this, the previous 2 days of this week, and that is we're talking about the third temple. And the third temple, we said, is going to correspond to um, Jacob, and Jacob is eternal, eternal, and that is hinted at by um, iron, because the tabernacle and also the temples, they were made mostly from the elements that were used, metals that were used were gold, silver, and copper, but not iron. Iron was destructive. Iron is a destructive element, and therefore it was not used, was not brought into the holy temple. Iron. But it will be used for the third temple. It will be used for the third temple. This destructive forces of the world will be transformed, and they'll be used for the third temple. Now, the third temple, we'll have to see what this means, because the third temple is already built. It says the third temple is already built, and it's in heaven, and it's just waiting to come down. Mikdash Hashem Konan Yadecha. It's coming down into the world. So that's according to the Talmud, according to Chassidut, according to Kabbalah. The third temple is already ready. So what does it mean it's made from iron? So we'll see. Torah to Chassidut is going to explain. Now, this idea of the third temple, again, we want to explain this. I guess you can't explain it enough. Why do the Jewish people have to have a temple? What is so important about having a temple? The temple was destroyed. We mourn. Today is a fast day. We're mourning the approach of Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, that eventually he's going to destroy the first temple. But it began that he laid siege to the first temple. Today is a fast day, as we're speaking now, as a fast day. So what's so bad about the temple being destroyed? Big deal. So a building was destroyed. It's a terrible thing. I mean, it's a terrible thing that a building is destroyed. There's no doubt about it, right? If someone would blow up the White House, it would be a terrible thing. So they'll build another one. Such a big deal. Of course, it would be terrible, no doubt about it. So they'll build another temple and they'll build another White House, right? And same thing. Somebody blows up the Vatican. Okay, they'll build another Vatican. It's not the end of the world. Right? Politically, maybe it's a terrible thing. But the Holy Temple, they built the Holy Temple. It took 2,000 years. We can't rebuild it. Why not rebuild the thing? Such a big deal. Because the Holy Temple it's using this world for precisely what God wants us to. And that comes to show us that eventually the whole world will be a vessel for the exact revelation of God. Meanwhile, everything has to be according to the Torah. You can't just say, well, I want to build a holy temple. Let's just do it. Come on, let's just go up there and build it, guys. Come on. Build it. So this third holy temple is showing how infinitely important this physical world is to God if used exactly the way that God wants it. The world is important to God unconditionally, but it's not revealed unless it's used exactly the way God wants. And that's the idea of the temple. The first temple was destroyed. Second temple was destroyed. Now we're in exile. So the Rebbe, the first temple corresponds to gold. Second temple, that corresponds to silver. The exile that we've been in, that corresponds to copper. And the third temple is going to correspond, the third temple, right? The first temple is gold. The second temple is silver. The exile is copper. And the third temple that's going to be built, that corresponds to iron. Iron, why? Well, because iron is strong. It's powerful. Powerful. Or the way Chassidut says like this, it's known that BARZEL, that iron is the first letters of Bilha, Rachel, Zilpah, Leah. Who are these people? Who are they? Bilhah was the maidservant of Rachel. Zilpah was the maidservant of Leah. Bilhah, Rachel, Zilpah, Leah. So they're the four wives of Jacob. That they are the maidservants of the 12 tribes. Right? Leah gave birth to 6 of the tribes. 6 of the tribes, like we just finished learning. Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, and afterwards Yisachar and Zevulun. 6. And Rachel, she gave birth to, good morning, and Rachel gave birth to 2. So that's 8. She gave birth to Yosef and Benjamin. And Bilhah and Zilpah, they gave birth to the other 4 tribes, right? Dan and Naphtali and Gad v'Asher. But altogether, these 4 wives of Jacob, they gave birth to the 12 tribes. Who connect and corresponding to them, there's also the 4 levels of Nukva de Klipa. Jacob had 4 holy wives. There's also what's called 4 unholy wives, not of Jacob, but of Klippa, the world. Like it says with Og, Melech Bashan, it says, Arso, that his bed was a bed of iron, Barzel, again. This is also the 4 mothers, but the bad side. Bad, it doesn't say who they are. That's the opposite of the Barzel, iron of holiness, is the destructive iron, which that's what iron is up to now. The Holy Temple is going to change that. The Hosef also that the order of these 4 wives of Jacob are, first of all, Bilhah, she was the maidservant before Rachel, and Zilpah before Leah. Bilhah came before Rachel, and Zilpah came before Leah. The shifcha, that the maidservant comes before the mistress. Who Seder, this is the Seder of Zeh L'umot Zeh. This is what's called one opposite the other. The shifcha ki tiresh gevirta. It says, shifcha, what is this, 77? In Mishle. It says it's a bad situation when the servants rule over the masters. It's in Proverbs. And this is being transformed. That's the idea of Judaism, to transform the darkness and frustration and and confusion, death of this world to be holy. That's the temple, to transform the bad to good. We can say that this also in holiness, there's also the maidservant rules over the mistress in a good way. We're going to transform this bad when the servant becomes the master. That's a bad thing. We're going to see this sometimes when the servant becomes the master is a good thing. We'll see how. That's going to be the 3rd temple. Let's first of all, let's discuss why the Rachel and Leah, that they're called the mothers, why they're better in some way than even Abraham and Yitzchak and Yaakov. Okay, one second. Let's go back here. In Judaism, each one of the founders of Judaism was married, and they had children. Very important thing in Judaism to be married. Very important. Very important. Very important and very essential in Judaism to be married. It says that a person that doesn't have children is like he's dead. He, she. Having children is like the of utmost importance in Judaism. To be married and have children. Very important. And the examples were, of course, the fathers of Judaism. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Moses, David. They were all, none of them were, even Elijah the prophet, all the prophets, they were all married. There's no such thing as a person not being, that makes you holy. When you're holy, you're not married, right? You're not married. there were some examples in the Torah. It says Ben Azai. It says that Ben Azai was married, that he stopped. Anyway, there's no higher, and everything, there's rare exceptions, but but this is a general principle. Okay, so Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob especially, each one of them was married, right? Abraham's main wife was Sarah, Yitzchak, Rivka. Yaakov, his two wives were Leah and, to tell you the truth, exactly where Bilhah and Zilpah are buried, I don't know. I never really even thought about that. Somebody, interesting, I'll have to ask somebody. Okay, but in any case, so Abraham and his wife, and Yitzchak and his wife, and Yaakov and one of his wives are buried together in Hebron. And Rachel is buried alone for whatever different reasons why. Like it says, so in some way the wives are higher than the husbands. Like it says by Avram, whatever Sarah tells you should listen to her. Shoya Avram in a way was secondary. He was, how do you say, the inferior to Sarah as far as prophecy goes. Sarah was a superior prophet. And like it says in Bedugmas, in the future, it says in the cave at the Sovas Geber, it says in the future that the women will be higher than the men. Eshet Chayla Teret Bala, a woman of valor becomes the crown over her husband. Okay, this world in general is considered to be feminine. It receives, and God is masculine. So somehow this world is going to be higher than God. What does that mean? We'll see. Shespirat Malchut, that the aspect of God's what's called Malchut, kingship, the lowest aspect of God, will be higher than all of the other Sfirot. Sheme'ain says something like this. This is by Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Like it says, Shlosha Ta'imim, there were three that tasted, that God gave them the taste in this world of the world to come. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Like it says by Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, it says by each one of them call. Call is referring to heaven. Ba call, Mikal call. It says that God blessed Abraham, but call, and it says, okay, the word call is used by Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and the word call means everything that corresponds to heaven. Similarly, it says also the shfachot. Excuse me. Also by the maidservants regarding also the same thing it says by the maidservants regarding their mistresses, right? That somehow or other Zilpah was higher than Leah and Bilhah was higher than Rachel. How Bilhah comes before Rachel and Zilpah becomes before Leah. Like it says in Rachel, Shenitna Shivchata Bilhah to Yaakov, and she says, Abaneh Gam Anochi Mimena, that Rachel gave Bilhah to Yaakov. Rachel saw that she wasn't giving birth to children. So she said, well, take my maidservant, that you can have a children from her, that she in some way is better than me. She'imahot, that the mothers, Rachel and Leah, Hein bechinas Malchut, they are like Malchut of Atzilut. They are the lowest aspect of Atzilut. And the Shivchot, they are, Malchut has how it comes down into this physical world. So spiritually, maybe the mothers were higher, but physically, actually, they in order to produce in the world, there had to be the mothers. They had to be the maidservants. They were the ones that gave birth first. Similarly, Evan Moaso Bonim, like it says that the stone that was rejected by the builders became the top, that the Avos, that the Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, that they built the spiritual worlds by means of their wives with the maidservants. Lo Ratsu, they did not want on their own, they did not want to marry the maidservants. They were discussed, they were rejected. The maidservants, they were the stones that were rejected. They didn't want the Shemasu B'Yerida, that Abraham, that Yaakov, in our case, Yaakov did not want to come down to Bria, Yetzirah, and Asiya. Same thing was with Abraham with marrying Hagar. Aval Pikain, nevertheless, Davka, by means of getting married to the Shfachot, by means of getting married to the maidservants. In our case, Jacob got married to Bilhah and to Zilpah. Is by means of this became building, the Malchut became building the Jewish people in a complete way. So if so, it comes out that the maidservants ruled over their masters, and that was for a good way. They gave birth to 4 of the 12 tribes, and without that, there would only be 8 tribes. There wouldn't be 12. and by Rachel especially, Rachel, it says that she couldn't give birth. She didn't give birth, and therefore she gave Bilhah to open up the door for birth for her also. Bilhah was her maidservant. So we see that the maidservants in some ways more fertile and productive than the mothers were, than Rachel and Leah were. Okay, what's this got to do with us? What's this got to do with? Similarly, also regarding the Holy Temple. So again, what we're stressing is that the lowest somehow or other can be the highest. The lowest can be the highest. That's what we said, that Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, their greatness was that God gave them the taste of the spiritual worlds in this physical world. In the physical. So the lowest, the physical world, that became a sign for the highest things. Explained also in Chassidut that the reason that the Holy Temple was made from stones, remember we learned this it was last week in Torah Or. The reason that the Holy Temple was made from stones, and it wasn't made like the tabernacle from cedar wood, to the degree that Ein Bonim Eitz Bolet, you're not supposed to have any wood in the temple. Couldn't be any revealed wood. Why? Kavan, since Shayata, the first and the second temples were made totally of stone. Why? Because it was something like the completion that's going to wholesomeness, that's going to be revealed in the future when, good morning, when Sfirat Malchut, the lowest of the 10 Sfirot, which is Malchut, that represents the physical world, the lowest, will be higher than even Zeranpin, than God's emotions. Right? There's the 10 Sfirot of God. The lowest of them is what we call God's mouth, God speaking. That corresponds to the lowest of the 10 Sfirot, which that's Malchut. And God's, so to speak, God's emotions, that corresponds to what's called Zeranpin, small faces. That's the spiritual worlds. It says in the future, the physical will be higher than the spiritual. Malchut will be higher than Zeranpin, than the emotions of God. That's another name for the emotions of God. It says the woman of valor will be a crown for her husband. The physical will be higher than the spiritual. Therefore, therefore the holy temple, the first temple and the second temple, were built from stones. And domim, mineral. This indicates on the Sfirot of Malchut, the lowest of the 10 Sfirot, and it was not built from wood, which wood is vegetable. That indicates Zeranpin. That's like the emotions of God. They grow up. So therefore, it was built from stone. This indicates, we learned about this last week. The point the Chassidut wants to bring out, Chassidut Chabad, and the point Moshiach is going to bring out, is how much God loves this physical world, that this physical world is infinitely more important to God, and much more godliness can be revealed in this physical world than all of the spiritual worlds that there are. All the angels are screaming out to God, and God's revelation is so great and everything like that. It's all true, but it's nothing compared to how God loves this physical world. That's the whole story of the Bible. That God cares about the physical world. The Bible is not a handbook to get you into heaven. If you do what God says in the Torah, it's true that there's a reward for heaven, etc. But that's like after you finish working in your job, you retire, you get a golden watch or something, right? But if you enjoy your work, you don't want the golden watch. You don't want anything. You just want to work. The same thing, the most important thing is this world, not the rewards. Heaven is like the rewards. You don't want the reward. The person really, in this world, you serve God. This world is incredibly important. And that's what the first and the second temples were made from stone, to show the stone is the lowest. This physical world is the most important. But the third temple is going to be made from iron, because stone is not destructive, it's constructive, and iron is destructive. And when that becomes transformed, this is going to be even iron, which is below stone. This indicates on BARZEL, iron. This is how the aspect of God's kingship comes down low into this world. Right? Stone is much lower. It's dead. When a person is dead, so they bury him in the mineral, in stone. Stone is the lowest form of life. It's not alive at all. Stone. Which is not the case. Plants are much higher. Animals are even higher than plants. That's why the tabernacle was made, that on the ground was earth, but the walls were made of of trees, and the top was animal skins. It went from below to above. That's the way God is supposed to be, right? Godliness goes from below to above. It says that's not so. True godliness, the God of Israel, is revealed in this physical world more than up in all the heavens. And that's the temple was made from stone, but making it from iron, that's already going too far. Iron is bad. That's already, that can't be done. It says, but it's going to be done. That's the third temple. We're going to take all of the bad of the world and transform it to good. Yeshlon, we can say that the future temple will be revealed, the true aspect of God coming into this world. It's called Malchut, God's kingship. Not only how it is in the upper worlds, in God's intention, but also the physical, how it comes down into the physical world, was called Bria, Yetzir, and Asiya, through the lower spiritual worlds, which is Bria and Asira, and the physical world. Shetit Pateh, that this will be expressed in the power and the power and the dynamics, not just of stones, but of iron. Iron is even stronger than stone. The Holy Temple was destroyed by iron. Eretz, it says, one of the blessings is that about land of Israel is that the land of Israel is a place where its stones are of iron, BARZEL. Something like we just finished saying that the lowest is the highest, just like the maidservants are higher than their mistresses. Bilhah is higher than Rachel, and Zilpah is higher than Leah. And that's the first letters of BARZEL. That's going to be the third temple. So the third temple is not only going to be something that's really amazing and that it's going to be in God's hands. It's going to take this physical world and show how even the bad things in this world, which they're creations of God, can be transformed to good. Even the evil, we say it every day 3 times in the Aleinu prayer. Yifnu elecha kol rishei oretz. All the evil people in the world will turn to you, God. Maimonides says in the end, he brings a prophecy from Jeremiah that all of the religions in the world, they'll just sort of automatically stop. They'll just stop. All the religions in the world, they say, what were we doing? How were we worshiping, spiritual things and people? And how are we doing? I guess it was just a mistake. It was just all of a sudden, because all of the bad of the world, all of the idolatry and all the evil in the world, the reason that people do it is because they think it's good. They think there's no alternative. They think there's nothing better. Let's put it that way. There's nothing better. So therefore, people do terrible things. Right? There's a joke about this. A joke. I'll tell you a joke. There was once a person that was, I experienced this a little bit, but he was an alcoholic. He was an alcoholic, and he began losing his eyesight and his hearing. He was drinking. So his children, he went to the doctor, and the doctor said, "Listen, you have a chance. You can heal yourself. It's not totally, you're not totally gone. Stop drinking, and you see that your sight and your hearing will return." Right? He went there with his children. His children forced him to go to the doctor. Stop. So the children locked them up in a room, and sure enough, right? They kept them occupied. They brought doctors. They brought psychiatrists. They brought this, and finally they got him off of it. Right? They did the 12-step program, whatever it is, and he stopped drinking. And sure enough, his sight came back and his hearing came back. It was amazing. They made a big party. Happy. His father was so happy. A couple months later, they saw him sitting and drinking again. They said, Dad, what are you drinking for? Why? He said, I'll tell you the truth. I didn't see anything and I didn't hear anything which is as pleasing to me as a good bottle of whiskey. There's no alternative. The best thing I could see was to get drunk. The best thing I could hear, right, was to get drunk. I didn't hear any music that pleased me like getting drunk. I didn't see any sights that movies or was any sunsets that gave me as much pleasure as getting drunk. So, okay, is it a joke? I don't know if it's a joke or not. I had a grandfather. I told this story a lot of times. I had a grandfather that he had pneumonia. He was a heavy smoker, and he had pneumonia. And he went to the hospital. And they called the whole family, and they thought he was going to die. And all of a sudden, he got better. He got better. And the doctor said, "Listen, if you stop smoking, that smoking irritates it in your lungs. Stop smoking, and you can live a long time." Right? He stopped smoking, and he really felt better afterwards. And I saw him. He used to work with my father at a drugstore. He worked at a drugstore. I saw him was smoking again. So I said, "Why?" He said, "I just couldn't take life. Isn't worth living without smoking." That's what he said. It's not life. Not life. Not. It's the same thing. All of the people in the world. The reason that there's evil in the world because people think there's nothing better than that. That's BARZEL of this world. The destructiveness of this world is because people think there's no alternative. That's life. That's really life. Huh? That's really life. Like, the mobs and things like that. You're living a life of danger, of this, living on the edge. What do they call it? Living on the edge. Excuse me. Says, but in the future, it's not going to be that way. In the future, when God is revealed, everyone's going to be revealed that life is has much more content to it than just doing bad, destructive things like iron. We can maybe say that the completion of this barzel of iron, of holiness, which is in the third temple, will come when Gamakach shebenenu yihiyeh gam mibarzel, when it is built not just from stone but from iron. Shabarzel, that iron itself will be part of the third temple. That's the question we had at the beginning. How can it be if it's already built? So how is it going to be built from? So it says Barzel, it does not. So the third temple is not only going to transform the bad things of the world into good, it's going to be made from the bad things of the world. Barzel Enkativ, the temple and the tabernacle were made from gold, silver, and copper. Iron is not written there. B'mishkan u'mikdash shehichriv beit hamikdash. These things destroyed the temple. That refers on the first temple and on the second temple, that they were destroyed by means of iron. Masha Enkin, which is not the case. The third temple, which is going to be an eternal third temple, it will never be destroyed. Lo shayach bo chashash, there is no worry that iron can be a bad thing. Even since in the future, Tid Bartel, there will be negated the very existence of destruction, of destructive iron. So automatically, it's necessary that it could be built. It can be built from iron, because that's the whole purpose of the Holy Temple, is to transform the world. In order to stress at the Eloi, the highness and the completion of the transformation of iron, that the temple was destroyed by means of iron, to show that in the future that very iron that destroyed the temple will be used to build the third temple. We can say, that what it says in Chronicles regarding to King David when he prepared everything for the third temple. What does it say? Listen to this. It says, you have to look over there in Chronicles. We're in Chronicles 98 in Chronicles. Where is this? It says, look at it. It says, Chronicles, there's two books of Chronicles, right? So the first book of Chronicles, chapter 29, 2, page, the sentence number 2. Okay, it says, so BARZEL. Okay, ready? So what does it say over there? That King David, when he prepared to build the first temple, he didn't build the first temple, his son did. God didn't allow King David to build the temple because the first part of his life, he fought a lot of battles. He killed a lot of people, even though he had to do it. It was a commandment. But the fact is the killing is not good. So even if it's a big commandment and things like that, and killing is a negative thing. It's not a good thing. In Judaism, it says even when there was the death penalty in Judaism, it hasn't been a death penalty for like well over 2,000 years. When there was the death penalty, it says that a court that killed somebody once in 7 years, or one opinion said 70 years, it was called a destructive court. Beit din chablanit, it said. Okay, it says that what it says in the book of Chronicles, that King David prepared the temple to be built. So it says, Hechinoti, I prepared for the holy temple gold, silver, gold for the gold of the temple, silver for the silver that would be used in the temple, copper that would be copper, and barzel and iron. King David said, I prepared iron. Look over there and see. Iron, how much was there? 100,000 kikar units, whatever they were, tons, who knows. This will be used in the third temple. In order to build this, the third temple will also be built by means of King David. David, Moshiach, King David, King Messiah. That its building will be not only from gold and silver and copper, but also the third temple will be built from iron. According to this, now we can say that the whole idea of the 10th day of Tevet, today that we're fasting, who is Atchalat Binyan Mikdash Atid, this is the beginning of the building of the third temple and the third redemption. Well, redeemed not only from Egypt and from Babylon, but also from Rome. That's what it says. Now we're in the exile of Rome, it said. Even though Shel Matzor the Esor of Tevis, that the siege of the 10th day of Tevis was the beginning of the destruction of the temple, but since that the intention in this was that afterwards, and by means of this, there would be built the third temple, an eternal temple. Nimsa, so it comes down. Shehatchalat ha'ma'orot, the Chorban. I don't like that word temple today. That word temple. So where did they get that from? I don't know. It's the whole, I guess it's not nice to say a holy house, Beit HaMikdash. Okay. From now on, I'm not going to say temple. I'm going to say the Beit HaMikdash. Okay, you'll understand. That the whole idea of the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash was the beginning of the third Beit HaMikdash. The Inyan Zeh, this is hinted at the Siman, the sign that was given to the Matzor in the 10th day of Tevet, when the king of Babylon laid siege to Jerusalem. What did the king like we said, the Rebbe said before, the only reason he did it, maybe he didn't know this. I mean, I'm sure he didn't know it, but the reason he did it was to show the Jewish people that, hey, the powers of destruction are coming near to the holy city of Jerusalem. You better get your act together, Jews. Get your act together, return to the Creator, start loving God instead of yourselves, start fearing God instead of fearing for yourselves. Think Jewish, act Jewish, speak Jewish, and then Nebuchadnezzar will go away. He didn't destroy the temple yet. The 10th day of Tevis, he's just showing that he's laying siege. He could come close. What did it say over there? What did it say about Nebuchadnezzar? I'm sorry, what did God gave a prophecy to Ezekiel, the prophet Ezekiel, and he said, Ata now, kach lacham machavat barzel, take a pan or whatever it is, a sheet of iron. That's in the prophecy of Ezekiel. Take a big pan of iron, make it an iron wall as a sign for the house of Israel. The whole purpose is of the whole idea of the destruction of the temple. He is in order that afterwards there will be revealed the completion of barzel, of iron, of holiness in the future. As we will talk about more, God willing, tomorrow. Yeah, talk of the 10th day. Should we do this? What do you say? If we do this, then we won't be able to do the story. Okay, well, let's do this. Stop the share. We'll do this tomorrow. Where are we now? We're on Tet, right? No. Oh, no, we're not. No, we're not. We're on Chet. Okay.